We may be a day late due to the schedule change with the Northern Trust, things being pushed back due to the hurricane, but we are here in good spirits because Tony Finau is a winner. We got the BMW Championship coming up. It is a no-cut event, so we are ready to talk some PGA DFS and get you set for tee times tomorrow morning. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor of numberFire.com. And Brandon, I feel like we're responsible for this Tony Finau win because we were talking about win juice on the podcast last week. We were joking on Twitter about how Tony Finau could endorse win juice, and he apparently had win juice last week, and he wins. Jon Rahm, who is in my best lineup, which is doing really well for all of Saturday, Sunday when there was no competition, early Monday. So I was devastated to lose some money there, but it's Tony Finau, so that kind of helps. Finau at the win juice. How are you doing today?
I mean, good. We love Tony Finau on this podcast. We were talking about the win juice, as you alluded to already, and I don't think it's actually an illusion. I think it's much more than an illusion, so I shouldn't use that word. But it's nice to see because I'm just a big believer of the fact that it's extremely hard to win a golf tournament, and that saying someone doesn't have it whenever they're consistently finishing top 10 and top 5 is just, it's silly. And so to see Tony go out there and get it done, and I don't want to hear anyone say that Jon Rahm choked it away or that Cam Smith choked it away. Tony Finau was great. He is great. And it's nice to see the variance fall his way for once.
Past month has been devastating for He Can't Win Twitter, between Xander getting a gold medal, Tony Finau winning last week at the Northern Trust. It's rough.
Yeah, but people with Xander, it was the Olympics, so it's a small field, not the most difficult field. For Tony Finau, wasn't technically a full field, so if we had about 30 more bottom tier PGA golfers, that would have made this a much more impressive win. Doesn't matter that Jon Rahm, Cam Smith, all these guys were at the top of their games. Doesn't matter if you
scrubs.
If you want
is more Denny McCarthy, and then we can count it as a win for Tony Finau because without that,
Denny McCarthy out here catching some strays. But
we support Denny McCarthy on this podcast. But
even Jon Rahm said if you don't like Tony Finau, there's something wrong with you. So
I agree with Jon Rahm wholeheartedly here. So Tony Finau, victorious in the Northern Trust. We move now to the BMW Championship, the second round of the FedEx Cup playoffs. It is at a brand new course. It is at Caves Valley Golf Club. Depressingly not in a cave. Kind of was hoping for that. Had some outsider vibes there. Ben Mendelsohn, that show on HBO. But whatever. It's fine. We can live with it. I know you're super aware of what that is. But Caves Valley Golf Club, CVGC, for those of us in the know. 7,542 yards and a par 72. There are 69 golfers in the field. Very nice. Yeah, I see you. 69 golfers in the field. Patrick Reed out once again. So none of him this week, but the rest of the field is still there. And once again, the top 30 golfers advance to next week's championship. And positioning does matter a lot. So it's not just who will crack into that top 70, but everyone has motivation here because you can get a 10-stroke advantage this week. That'll help you win, as Brandon is want to remind us. It does help to have a nice little advantage for next week. So a lot of motivation for this week. This is the first time they played this course on the PGA Tour. Brandon, what stands out to you when digging into the layout of this course?
Yeah, I mean, I did my best. That's really all you can ever try to do whenever we have a course with really there weren't even Corn Ferry events or anything I could really dig back into. So it's more of a taking kind of an overview, like a flyover estimation. And usually whenever I find a course or whenever we reach a course where there's not a whole lot, I just kind of go all over with the stats and try to get everything just so that I kind of have my bases covered. But you already mentioned the length here. One thing that stood out to me is that the average green size is about 5,200 square feet, which is smaller than average on the PGA Tour. The average just over 6,000 generally, so not substantially different, but these greens do look a little bit, some of those longer angular greens, things like that, the oblong shapes. And honestly, seems like there are a lot of spots where having distance off the tee can help, but also spots where you need to kind of hit fairways. So again, it's just kind of an assumption, and we might find out that the longer hitters just end up having a huge advantage because they can carry things, and they just carry things all 4 rounds. But it could be that, it's enough just to hit fairways and stay in play. So, we don't have anything to go off of, but they did lengthen this course recently. It was a Tom Fazio design back in, I think 91, and then they added a bunch of length to it this past year just to get it up to PGA Tour standards. And going back to the green size, I think that is just a main reason to keep strokes gained approach as our number 1 stat. I don't really see any reason to go away from that. And then again, for driving, tight-ish fairways from what I can tell, but also where distance matters. So I'm going to go strokes gained off the tee. So you just need to do something positively with driver, especially playing against these elite golfers. Chipping might be vital given how small the greens are, but we just saw Liberty National and they had even smaller greens, about 4,650 square feet on average. So smaller than what we get this week. And we saw golfers go low. So, I mean, it's not a guarantee, but basically what I'm getting at is strokes gained approach and strokes gained off the tee should be our key stats. And then for something that might kind of pan out, it might not, but looking at a hole by hole, I have proximity from 200 plus yards on my list, which is not the kind of thing that I look at anymore, just because I don't know the course difficulty, the conditions for a lot of these, they're unadjusted, but there are a lot of long par 3s ranging in this distance. So I think that could help. And then possibly for the forced layups for the shorter hitters, they're going to have longer approach shots. So maybe longer approaches, 175 plus, 200 plus, things like that. Could be something, could be an angle, but for honestly, I'm going primarily for ball striking. So off the tee and approach, and then putting conversion specifically on bent grass if you have that.
I think looking at the distance of this course has led a lot of people to kind of lean into some heavy hitters for this week, which makes sense. It is a long course, like you mentioned, and it seems like the people who have played there do think that distance will be advantageous. But when I look at the odds, it seems like it's possible there has been, I don't want to say an overreaction, but it's possible that is being baked into a lot of what we're seeing right now. So specifically, Abraham Answer seems like potentially a bit undervalued. And I think that while I do want to value distance, do want to value guys who can take advantage, I also don't think this is a spot where I want to cross off guys who are not Bryson, etc. So I think for me, I think that going with overall off the tee play, valuing just being a good driver, whether it be via distance or other stuff, I think that is the right way to play things for this week. So I have the same thing there. Strokes gained off the tee is being a key stat this week because I don't want to cross off guys like Answer who are just tremendous golfers because they may not bomb it. I do think that there's an advantage to being long. And if you can't gain strokes because you're not long enough, that's definitely a negative. But I think that the way that you're viewing things, where we go with off the tee over distance by itself, I think that is the correct way to play things for this week.
Yeah, I mean, and again, a lot of strokes gained off the tee is actually explained by distance. So that's part of it. That's why I feel like I don't have to go specifically with distance. But, you can't really go that wrong targeting the best ball strikers possible. Now, for the most part, the best ball strikers on tour are the higher salary golfers on FanDuel. But every now and then you get some golfers in the value range who have elite ball striking, and that's generally what we spend an hour every week talking about is the better ball strikers at a value salary on the heat check.
And we'll be doing that again in the current form section. Of course, no course history to discuss. We'll talk some current form in just 1 second. But first, hey, sports fans, FanDuel is offering an exclusive promotion for new sportsbook users. Join FanDuel Sportsbook today and make your first bet. If you lose, we'll give you a refund up to $1,000 in site credit within 72 hours. Your first bet after depositing will qualify. If you made multiple selections on one bet slip, it'll be the first selection you made. Head over to FanDuel Sportsbook today and place your first bet. Must be 21 plus and present in Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. New users only. Max bonus $1,000 site credit. See full terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Colorado, 1-800-522-4700. In Iowa, 1-800-BETS OFF. In Indiana, 1-800-9-WITH-IT. For confidential help in Michigan, 1-800-270-7117. In Tennessee, call the red line at 1-800-889-9789. Or in West Virginia, 1-800-GAMBLER.net. Let's dive into current form by talking about the headliner for this event, the massive favorite for this one, and the highest salary golfer on FanDuel. That is Jon Rahm. Because, Brandon, we can't bury the lead. We can't stick Rahm somewhere else. I feel like we kind of got to talk about him here because a lot of our decisions will branch off of how we view Rahm. So talking about Rahm and how we're handling him this week.
Yeah, I mean, Jim threw a lot of heavies on how favored Jon Rahm is, and he's plus 650 to win on FanDuel Sportsbook. Next up is JT, aka Justin Thomas, at 18 to 1. So it is a cavernous gap. But as we talked about last week,
appropriate for a cave place.
Yeah, that must have been in the back of my mind. So we have that huge gap in odds. And honestly, in my win simulations, Rahm is heavily favored, and I'll talk about why in just one second. But, the reason that I think it's worth talking about here at the top is because he's mega popular, like mega heavy to win, but his salary on FanDuel was $12,000. And then next up is Xander Schauffele at 11.7, Justin Thomas, aka JT, at 11.6. So we don't see that, and we talked about it last week. But I think it's important that we kind of establish why it's relevant to talk about Jon Rahm on FanDuel this week, because of the salary not being quite so large, but because the form is so good. According to Data Golf, Rahm in his past 20 rounds, he's gained 4.02 true strokes gained per round, which is their adjusted strokes. So 4.02. Basically, you would look at that as a baseline professional golfer. He's going to beat them by 4 strokes based on how he's been playing over his past 20 rounds. Next up is Harris English at 2.42, and only 2 other golfers, Cam Smith and Louis Oosthuizen, are above 2. So Rahm has basically been 2 shots per round better than virtually everyone else lately. And that includes, I'm looking at the guys playing at their high end right now, who's playing at their 20 round elite peak. That's why Harris English, Cam Smith are up there, not guys with greater long-term form. It's who's really hot right now? These guys, and Rahm is so much hotter than they are. It's insane. Rahm should probably have 30 wins this season. I don't know how he doesn't actually have more. Obviously, the Memorial he should have won, but had to withdraw. But I think this just really comes down to game theory. Rahm was 38.5% rostered on FanDuel last week, making him the only golfer above 30%. We're cutting the field down a lot. That should creep up to about 45%. I don't think there's any reason to feel worse about Jon Rahm this week than we did last week. So we're looking at maybe 45-50% roster rate for Jon Rahm. Talk to me about your view on him for cash games and then also tournaments.
I don't know how you don't use him in a cash game, I guess, is the way that I would think about it, because who else are you putting in there for cash?
I made that mistake last week.
Yeah. Because now you're only a game up in the bobble hat with 2 weeks left. Our weekly head-to-head season-long competition. You're only 1 up, and I gave you 2 weeks off to try to make up ground, to give myself less leeway, and yet here we are. So,
well, I said we didn't have to do that, but
I know, but I was trying to be a gentleman because I was not here.
Okay.
Yes, me. Yes.
Hey, do you know what you remember when you alluded to the 10-shot lead? Would you like to explain why you called that out?
Nope. So Jon Rahm, $12,000. I think that it kind of comes down to what you said, where the gap between his salary and the field is not big enough. So I would say Jon Rahm a lock for cash games. I would say I would like to get to 60 to 70-ish% Jon Rahm for tournaments. I think that's appropriate. And then I think it does help too that it's a no-cut event. We still want to prioritize golfers who aren't going to implode, but it does help to have a full 4 rounds for each golfer. So I would say go Rahm and cash, 60 to 70% exposure for tournaments, and go from there. Are you on the same page?
Yeah, especially for cash games, I think you lock it in because we're looking at, look, golf is inherently volatile, but right now, ROM's baseline is so high. And I'm looking at 20 rounds here, but I should have those pulled up. But ROM in my database, so this adjusts for field strength and recency over the past year. ROM's at a 2.55. Next up is the 1, same as Louis. And then Spieth's at a 1.75. Again, this rate waits for recency, so that's a big part of it. But even with that, he's like 0.7 shots better than the next best guy in the world. So you're guaranteeing yourself virtually, like if you say everyone plays at their baseline, that's what, 2.8 shots over 4 rounds over Xander. Like that's going to add up. And really what you're asking for with ROM to disappoint is like, yes, outlier rounds, but at this point, like huge outlier rounds to put him like 20th in this field, which seems it can happen in the simulations I run. He finishes like 20th sometimes, but that's a very, very low probability that he's just irrelevant.
So I think that like we just kind of have to use him. Like
I have him above 50% to top 10. Like
it's absurd. And like we don't care about floor. Like floor is stupid for daily fantasy. It's how you lose a lot of money. But it's nice to have that reassurance that the ceiling is insane and he comes with a good floor as well. So ROM, tremendous option. Shockingly. Who could have predicted that? Let's move now to Cam Smith, because last week I got very lucky. I was at the gym in the morning, saw that Patrick Reed had withdrawn. Yeah, I lift, bro. I lift. I
was working out.
Sorry,
checking my phone.
Getting swole at 6:45 and see Patrick Reed's withdrawn. So I got to Cam Smith out of panic mostly, and it worked out. I, probably wouldn't have gotten there either way. So thanks, Patty, for being a generous man and helped me out there. But Smith is a guy I should have been on before that. He ranks 5th in Data Golf's true strokes gained over the past 6 months. He's trailing Rahm, Spieth, Morikawa, and Westhazen. Of course, Louis up there. Smith's ball striking's not great, but he's also not a negative there. And Cam Smith, the short game, obviously tremendous. Plus, Smith did gain 8.4 on approach at the Northern Trust and 4.6 at the Travelers. When he does that, he has winning upside, and he's done it twice in the past 3 measured events. So we shouldn't assume that he's going to gain 4 strokes on approach, but it's within his range of outcomes. When that does happen, the dude is absurd. He's 10-9 this week. That's higher than the 10K he was at last week, but it seems like he's worth it. So how are you viewing Cameron Smith here relative to his now peers in this upper salary tier?
Yeah, so I mean, I mentioned Smith in that past 20 round discussion, but he's 5th over the past year when I account for recency too. So I mean, he's been trending up like quickly and in a way that is really, really intriguing too, with just kind of what we're seeing from him. So I have always loved Cam Smith because he has a good hat game. Now he's got the hair and the mustache going too. But one thing that really stands out to me is just kind of like he's not always going to lose distance now. He's kind of gained some distance. If you go round by round, it kind of has some distance gained in there. So that is a huge plus. We know the short game is about as good as anyone's. So for me, I think Smith makes a ton of sense. He's not someone I'm going to straight up prioritize, but I wouldn't talk anyone out of Cam Smith this week.
Right. Like I think that in that range, it'd be easy to like look at Cameron Smith relative to like Rory. Rory's 10-8, a little bit lower than Cameron Smith. Like in general, like you see those names, you're like, wow, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. He's by Finau, he's by Bryson, he's by DJ. Like he's in a really good tier, but despite that fact, you don't cross him off this week. I think that's kind of what I'm trying to say is like, even though his salary is high and he's by great people, he should be. He deserves to be there for sure. So not, like you said, not a priority, but not a guy I'm avoiding there either. Let's move down to the mid-range, talk about Harry English, $9,700. Old Harry, back here on the podcast. And 97 is non-negligible, and it's not a course where guys of English's mold tend to, we're not like seeking out dudes who are not super long with the tee, but his form is just really good. and especially recently. What are you seeing with old Harry English here at $9,700?
Yeah, I mean, we've been talking about him for a long time. He always seems to rate out well in my win simulation model. The form's really strong, obviously, which is why we're talking about him. According to Data Golf, he is second in this field in true strokes gained over the past 20 rounds, as I talked about already, at a 2.42. Like that 4.08 is just nuts. But he is first in putting in that span, and he's also fourth around the green in strokes gained, which is not really the recipe that you want to see. The ball striking stats in that sample are still above average, but you have to think the short game is going to come back to earth eventually. On the other hand, though, English has been good like for a long time now. I think the biggest issue for me is that salary being a little bit too high, whereas I think with Cam Smith it's justified. With English, it's a little bit ironic to say I believe in Cam Smith, whose bread and butter is the short game. But English isn't. It's more about ball striking, and he's kind of been cold there and has been overperforming with the short game. I mean, really strong data from him last week, at least from a round-by-round scoring standpoint. It was consistent, 69, 68, 70, 69 for him. So, I mean, like, I don't dislike English. I just would much prefer him at, like, 90, even 94. I'd feel a lot better. With that salary at 97, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get there very often. What about you?
That puts him above Corey Connors, who is $9,600. Let's talk about him too, and then talk about this mid-range in general. Because Connors, he was very Corey-ish last week. Terrible putter early at the Northern Trust, and it looked like he was going to torpedo him. So I was pretty worried about that. But he did rebound after that. He wound up finishing 8th. Overall, Connors lost 3.3 strokes on his short game last week between around the green and on the green combined. Lost 4.6 the week before that. So it seems like the modest gains he was making on the short game are coming back to earth, but the ball striking is so good. He gained 6.4 in approach and 4.7 off the tee at the Northern Trust. He finished 15th at the Open, where don't have a lot of room for error there. He's $9,600. We know the limitations, and it seems like those limitations are a bigger concern for me than they were about a month ago. But I still think Connors is good for tournaments. If you're giving me Connors versus English in this mid-range, for tournaments, I think that it's Connors by a pretty significant margin. Where do you sit for Corey Connors, given the rebubbling concerns around his short game?
Yeah, it's basically like the inverse right now with English. If you go back and look at Harris English's putting, it's like 4+ strokes gained in a lot of his events. For Connors, it's hardly ever been positive over his past like 7. But despite that, he's been finishing pretty well. It's because his ball striking is just that good. And he is on bent grass this week, which is, I mean, he's especially terrible on POA. He's not good on bent grass with the putter. I'm not going to say that he is, but by comparison, at least, we're getting him on bent grass. So I prefer Connors just because of the ball striking to Harris English right now. So I don't think we're going to have a head-to-head there. I think we're on in agreement.
All in on Corey Connors. Let's move down to the value range, talk about a couple of guys below $9,000. Starting off with Sergio Garcia. Last week didn't go so well, but $8,600. Garcia can hang at the longer courses. What are you seeing with him here?
Yeah, so Garcia at that $8,600 salary, not someone I actually had interest in until I was looking for the golfers who had, let me say, like intriguing recent form. Not saying these are the guys with the absolute best recent form, but missed the cut last week at the Northern Trust, and usually that's like, oh, he's in bad form because he missed the cut, and there's a lot more to it than that. Now he did do that with negative strokes gained tee to green, which is especially not what you want to see, but that's rare for him because we know Garcia has elite tee to green upside, and over the past 20 rounds, which includes those 2 rounds entering with that missed cut at the Northern Trust, Garcia ranks 12th in the field in Data Golf's true strokes gained tee to green. He is 63rd in putting. Again, there are 69 golfers in the field, so 12th tee to green recently, 63rd in putting. That's pretty typical for Sergio, but how good that tee to green data is pretty welcoming, honestly. Just being top 12 in tee to green data lately, and he honestly has good results before that missed cut. He would finish between 17th and 26th in 6 straight events prior to the Northern Trust. That does include a 19th at the US Open, a 19th at the Open Championship, or the British Open, if you call it that, 26th at the WGC FedEx St. Jude. So kind of like, that's pretty solid. He can always putt himself out of any tournament, but he also can ball strike his way to an elite showing, especially at the salary of 8,600. So again, Garcia, not someone I had interest in initially, to a little bit of a closer look. Did he pop up for you on your value radar?
Referencing the 20-round sample you alluded to, because I actually was listening to you for once. In that 20-round sample was 4.3 strokes lost putting at the WGC St. Jude and 7.3 at the 3M Open. That could happen again. Like you said, he's always a threat to just absolutely eject on the greens, but he also did gain 2.1 at the US Open, gained 0.8 in the Miscut Northern Trust. So I would say, like, if we're ranking out probabilities, who is more likely to lose on the greens this week? Corey Connors or Sergio Garcia?
Yes.
I think it's Connors is more likely to lose this week than Garcia.
Probably.
I don't think either of them is a great bet to gain, but like,
well,
I don't want to. You're getting an actual answer?
Yeah.
Oh, man. Anyway, with Garcia, I think that he works. I think the ball striking being as good as it has been, the fact that he is not, we can't just assume that he'll lose strokes in the green. We should account for it, but we can't assume. So I think that Garcia is at least interesting as a result of that. Do you get the number?
Yeah. So according to Fantasy National, over their respective past 100 rounds, Connors has gained strokes putting in 45% of his rounds, and Garcia 34%. So Connors definitely more likely. I'll look at just bent grass here. Bent grass, it evens out a bit. 39% for Connors, 38% for Garcia.
Do you want to do Corey Connors or Sergio Garcia strokes gained putting head-to-head bet?
Yeah, let's do that. That's our best one ever.
That's not. It's definitely not. I'm into it though. I have Sergio, right? And you have Connors, just straight up strokes gained putting.
Yeah.
This is depressing.
We're gonna do that. We're gonna do that more.
I don't like this. I would like to be excluded from this narrative. Let's talk about Kevin Na, the antithesis, bizarro world Sergio Garcia, because we talked about him last week and now he's trending up, and then he finished 8th at the Northern Trust. He's $8,900 this week, so at least we're touching on him once again. That 8th place finish for Na was his 3rd top 10 in his past 4 events. Had a couple of runner-ups there. He just got there in a pretty wild way. He did gain 3 strokes putting. Makes sense. Kevin Na, very good putter, ranks 4th in the field in putting on bent grass, but he gained 8.3 strokes around the green. That is the 2nd most of his entire career. It is his highest mark by 2.3 strokes since 2016. We can't bank on outliers like that. Na lost 1.7 off the tee, 1.9 in approach at the Northern Trust. Did strike the ball well at the Wyndham, so not all of his good finishes here have been fluky, but last week does seem like it was fluky. So given the length of the course this week, given people may be on Na because of the good finishes, I'm giving him the Na way this week. What about you?
I don't know if anyone's ever said that before.
Well, I have now.
We say it all the time.
I know. No, I'm an innovator, pioneer, trailblazer.
So over the past year, Kevin Na over under 4th percentile in adjusted strokes gained off the tee.
I'll go over because I feel like you're trying to trick me and you want to beat me.
Under 3rd.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I don't trust you. If I trusted you more, I would have said under, but I don't. So
over under 16th percentile in adjusted approach.
Over.
Yeah, I was trying to trick you.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Look at 18th, baby.
Big smart boy. Smart boy. All right, here we go.
He is in the combined 7th percentile in this field in adjusted ball striking over the past year. That's tough, right? Like that's tough to get past. I know we were talking about Cameron Smith as someone who isn't like a great ball striker necessarily. But if I could get my spreadsheet to work here, I would have had a nice
Are you telling me you
comparison.
don't want to do a Cameron Smith versus Kevin Na strokes gained ball striking head to head?
I mean, I will if I get Cam Smith, who is in
No.
the 50th percentile in strokes gained ball striking over the past year with all my adjustments. So like that's the difference. I want to just kind of make that clear.
And there are some good plays around 9,000. So I don't think we need to force it with Nah. And
Yeah.
I would hope people gravitate there because of the good finishes. It could happen again because he's a good putter, good short game for sure. But I'm not going to bet on it by any means. Speaking of betting, let's take a look at what bookmakers are saying for this week for the BMW Championship. John Rahm, again, comically large favorite of FanDuel Sportsbook. He is plus 650. Nobody else shorter than 18-1. That is Justin Thomas, or as you said, JT. Again, you're an innovator too. Trailblazer, calling Justin Thomas JT. Got Colin Morikawa. Colin Morikawa. I combined his name with Xander. Xander Schauffele, Bryson DeChambeau are 20-1. Jordan Spieth, Dustin Johnson, and Tony Finau are 22-1. Patrick Cantley is 23, with Brooks Koepka, Louis Westhuizen, and Cam Smith at 25-1. Rory Mcilroy is 28, and Daniel Berger rounds at the top group here at 31-1. And Brandon, it seems like when you look at these numbers, it seems like they are heavily influenced by what happened last week. Potentially, at least to me, more so than usual, more overreacty, if that's a word, it is now, than what we've seen. So, got Thomas short, Finau super short. We got a pretty long number on Spieth. Do you think we should look into buying low on guys who struggled last week? Because to me, it looks like it's a pretty, at least in the betting market, it's a pretty serious overreaction to what happened at the Northern Trust.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite angles this week is to kind of target some golfers who actually missed the cut last week, because then they wouldn't be
playing on Monday,
waiting around, playing on Monday, then traveling. I don't know what, for example, Dustin Johnson did. Like if he stayed there, I don't know, but in theory, he could have just gone down to Maryland and has been posted up there. DJ also. So we said there's like no course history here, but there was the 2007 Palmer Cup, which was a collegiate event. DJ did play in that. I realize that's 14 years ago. I'm not saying that's relevant, but this apparently is a pretty exclusive course. And so I don't think a whole lot of people have access to it, at least playing it once and kind of having that. I don't know. DJ probably doesn't even remember playing it, honestly. Like he's kind of, I don't know if he's ever been serious, but I think he said stuff like that in the past. But I think that, I do kind of feel like there's an overreaction. I feel like, sure, John Rahm looks unbeatable, but the thing is, he didn't win last week, right? Like, so all of the win odds are just going toward John Rahm. So I think that we can kind of look at last week, and honestly, 1 week of data is not that predictive. It doesn't really help us predict what's going to happen next week. Sure, some golfers get on hot streaks, some golfers are on cold streaks, but like we know to trust the long-term data more often than not. So I think there is a lot of leverage that we can gain by kind of looking at last week and trying to take advantage of. And that should sound like we don't play John Rahm, but like that's a different conversation.
Are there any specific guys you're targeting as being like buy lows? You mentioned DJ. Is he kind of the primary target for you as far as getting in on guys who may have had a rough week last week?
I mean, he's the one who comes to mind first. But I'm not like against like a lot of other golfers. I mean, Garcia missed the cut, as I mentioned, so that might be a bit of a buy low opportunity for us. Who else here missed the cut? Jason Kochrack would be someone I have interest in. Tyrrell Hatton. He didn't. Never mind. But yeah, I mean, Morikawa missed the cut. Shot a 74.70. So, I mean, I think there's credence to that.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that it's not the rest narrative, but like, I mean, Spieth is pretty terrible over the weekend. Had a rough Thursday as well. The off the tee play is concerning, given that he did really struggle there. But I think that, we still long-term know he's a very good golfer. So I think that he could potentially be interesting too, despite the fact he may not be the best course fit. Which golfers' odds have shifted since things opened up on late Monday, early Tuesday?
Yeah, I think it was actually early Tuesday when I got these. But I think you actually said you saw Bryson shorten But
I had him at 22 and he's now 20.
Okay, I had him at 20, so he must have went from 20 to 22 to 20 again.
Yeah.
So,
okay.
Just want to make sure I wasn't missing anything. But I see some. Rory McIlroy is probably the primary one here from 27 to 23. Daniel Berger 33 to 31, and then kind of a big jump down to golfers whose odds have shortened. Charlie Hoffman 100 to 70, Keith Mitchell 150 to 100, and then Taylor Gooch and Aaron Wise from 150 to 120. A whole bunch of golfers had their odds lengthened, but I don't think that's as relevant.
So Rory Moose, you had 27 to 23. He actually was at 28 when I pulled, which means he's actually shortened even a little bit more.
Nice.
Any interest in Rory this week?
So I mean, this is basically like, do you want to play some of the best golfers on the planet whenever you might get a little bit of leverage? Like, sure. His iron play has been something that helped me buy back in. He had gained in he'd gained in 2, 4, 6, like 7 straight measured events with the irons, 6 out of 7. He generally almost always gains off the tee. But last week he did lose the Northern Trust, 3.7 strokes from approach, gained 3.4 on the greens, which is atypical for him. And Rory, honestly, just rarely shows that like high-end putting upside, but it's almost like a JT thing where he can lead the field in strokes gained tee to green, and if he gains like 3 strokes putting, he can win. We saw him at the Wells Fargo gain almost 7 strokes putting, but like, yeah, we're probably going to talk about the golfers. Most people, I would say, are going to talk about the golfers who looked really good, finished well last week, had the best tee to green data. I don't think that's that predictive. So I think that we could, quote unquote, buy low on Rory as a result.
For tournaments, Rory or Cam Smith?
Rory or Cam Smith, you said?
Yeah, for tournaments specifically.
Rory.
Yeah, I think based on where I'd expect the roster rates to go, I think I'd agree with that as well. Which lower salary golfers have odds stand out to you?
Yeah, so let me just vamp here because I forgot to filter it.
Do you click like 96, 97, 98 to like get rid of all of them, or how do you do this?
Have you ever filtered?
I don't like filtering. I filter on my NASCAR sheets, but that's always for like specific drivers, specific track types.
Okay, so you probably use Google Sheets, huh?
No, not for my NASCAR. I use Google Sheets when I have to display it for people.
Okay.
Because I don't want to have my actual like Excel up. It's a lot of work.
I'm just asking because I think it's
here.
irrelevant.
Clown question, bro.
I think people
question. Question. I was so close to changing to your sheet for my MLB thing when I was at the airport on Monday because I was bored.
It looks
Didn't
nice.
do it though. So just so you know, I thought about it and decided not to.
So no, I mean, there's a feature that you just say filter by less than or equal to whatever you want, and then that's how you do it.
When you do that, who pops up?
So I did it first for 9,500 and below, which I typically do to see if anyone really stands out, and Shane Lowry does. He's 35 to 1, and his salary is 9,500. So he's not like a true value, but 35 to 1 is an outlier relative to that salary. And then if we look at golfers whose salaries are 9,000 or below, with the best odds, we have Jason Kochrack, Kevin Na, Cameron Champ, all 65 to 1. Cam Champ is only 8,400 on FanDuel, but his win odds are always, so his sportsbook odds are always much shorter.
He was kind of what I was referring to when I was talking about how it seems like the odds makers are really leaning into the distance angle this week.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. And Champ, though, always seems to be a bit overvalued because he like has those weeks where he puts it together and wins and looks really good relative to other golfers of his like baseline level. But he's one of the worst golfers like long term in the field, so I'm not gonna be wanting to bet him. We also have Cameron Tringali, Keegan Bradley, Alex Noren, and Charlie Hoffman at 70 to 1. And then Sergio Garcia, Billy Horschel, Harold Varner, and Eric Van Rooyen at 80 to 1.
So you mentioned Shane Lowry. He's had tremendous irons recently. The wedges have been really good too. The off the tee play a bit lacking, but he's still finished really well because the other stuff has been so good. Is that enough to draw you in on Shane Lowry here at $9,500?
So I have some appeal. I just am probably not going to be living in this range too much. And for me, even with like recency adjustments, my model doesn't particularly like Shane Lowry as much as like the sportsbook odds, just because there are still some question marks here with his off the tee play, with the putting not being particularly good, although he is fine on bent grass. So I'm probably not going to get there, especially because if you made me guess, Shane Lowry is going to be a little bit more popular than he deserves to be, just because he is like, I mean, if you sort by salary and win odds, or if you sort by salary, you see like,
well, Connors will be above him there. And like Neiman's people like Neiman. I like Neiman.
Okay. So if you sort by salary, yes, Connors is above him because he's 9,600. But I'm saying if you sort by salary, I'm not going to name the names, but from 9,900 and below, here are the FanDuel Sportsbook win odds for golfers below 10K: 35, 35, 40, 33, 35, 50, 50, 50, 70, 65. So like Lowry is the lowest salaried golfer, and then you have a sportsbook odds drop to Neiman, Burns, Sungjae Im. So I think that Lowry is going to be a little bit more popular than he should be.
That's probably true. Okay, so weather for this week. Luckily, no hurricanes this week. The main rain spots in the forecast happening overnight, Saturday into Sunday, but we don't know tee times there, so not much to take away from that. There is minimal wind, so I would say we can play things straight up and move right into our player picks here for the BMW Championship based on the salaries over at FanDuel.com. Brandon, we talked about Jon Rahm already. We said 60 to 70% for tournaments, lock him in for cash games. That does mean we have 30 to 40% with no Jon Rahm for tournaments. So in those lineups, where are you turning at the top end of the player pool?
I like Dustin Johnson. His salary is $11,200 on FanDuel. Yes, like Jon Rahm's the best play, but I think this is a really good salary for Dustin Johnson, who did play here in 2007 in college, which I think is at least somewhat of an angle. And while I'm here, other golfers in this field who played here: Brian Harman, Billy Horschel, Chris Kirk, Webb Simpson. So, I mean, that could mean something. It could mean absolutely nothing. Don't play golfers based on that if you don't like what you see, but that's just something in a gauge. He might not even remember that he was here. But 93rd percentile in adjusted tee to green play this past year with field strength and recency adjustments, which honestly, for like the vibe around DJ, which is always just the lower, I mean, not specifically around DJ because it's always low energy with DJ, but like you would think it'd be probably worse than that. But he's still been good tee to green. According to Data Golf, he is running cold with the irons super lately. One of the worst, like past 20 rounds among the studs in approach play, but did miss the cut at Liberty National, the Northern Trust, I should say. The course was Liberty City. So he didn't have to play like late on Monday, didn't have to kind of like sit there and just kind of wait things out, do some putting on his hotel carpet, which, believe it or not, Jim, the pros, they're just like us. They do putt on their carpet sometimes. That
I had to do play-by-play for a putting competition. It was a ladder thing at the FanDuel Fan Fest on Sunday. The over-under was 50.5 putts to take for them to sink 4 each. And it was exactly 50. So they actually did a pretty good job setting that line there. But
how far were the putts?
5, 10, 15, and 20. You had to sink one from each.
One each.
Yeah.
I
wouldn't have done any better, and they were also pretty slanted, but you know,
they gotta get that aim point going. But
yeah.
So for DJ, he has missed 2 cuts in his past 3, which I think will also get people just away from DJ. He's got 5 top 25s and 3 top 10s in his past 5 made cuts. So I think there's still upside. I think people probably just won't go to DJ. And we have at least 2 kind of narrative-based things with the missed cut and not playing, and then also playing here way back when. So I like DJ as just kind of a tournament pivot this week.
Would you like to do a Dustin Johnson versus Bryson DeChambeau head-to-head?
I don't ever really want to put too much stock into DJ, but I'll do it.
Okay. You sound so enthusiastic. I think the Corey Connors Sergio Garcia putting one is probably better. Anyway, my high salary guy.
FanDuel points DJ versus Bryson?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason I like Bryson, if we're again counting out Jon Rahm, is the salary is very low. The approach play has been a little bit better recently, so I'm kind of interested in checking him out here. DeChambeau has gained 3+ strokes on approach in 2 straight. He had not gained 3+ strokes on approach since that Prior to that, since March. There we go.
I think you said since tomorrow.
I mean, whatever. He hadn't even topped the 2 in that time. Maybe that means he's going to gain 4 in approach tomorrow in the round since we're recording on Wednesday. I don't know. Either way, if Bryson gains 4 in approach tomorrow, you heard it here first. If not, please ignore. He finished 31st in Northern Trust. That was Bryson, but it's because he lost 5.6 on the short game. Don't really expect that with such a good putter out of Bryson, though the around the green issues are not as surprising. DeChambeau, 11-1, long course. We know he can take advantage. I'm willing to roll the dice on Bryson here. We call him Dyson DeChambeau. What you got on Bryson this week, Brandon?
I mean, you laid out a good case for him. This salary being low is what really helps. And honestly, if Rahm didn't feel so unfadable, it'd be a week where I'm like, yeah, like let's play DJ, Bryson, and Rory and save some salary. And like, if these guys show up like at their peaks, they can all be the best golfer on the planet, but they feel a little bit farther from that than Jon Rahm right now. So I wouldn't talk anyone out of Bryson. I still don't love the iron play from him ever. And he is planning on playing in a long drive competition soon. So I don't know if that's if we have the home run derby swing change narrative to watch out for Bryson.
Okay, good to know. Noted for sure. You were talking about how the irons are doing, which brings us to Victor Hovland, who used his irons in creative fashion this past week. He is 10-3. What are your thoughts on old Vic here?
Yeah, just demolished his putter. I didn't think he had it in him. But
another guy who was in that lineup that was doing really well, and then Monday happened. So old Vicky and I are not necessarily on talking terms at the moment. But go ahead.
Well, he and I have back and forth.
Tell him that I'm mad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going back to Hovland at 10-3. I think it's a really good salary. He is third in my combo model, which accounts for the stats I'm looking for. But also long-term adjusted form. He's in the 93rd percentile in birdie or better rate gained, which is definitely a key stat for me this week. Anytime we get a no-cut event, you want birdies because that leads to FanDuel points, and a birdie plus a bogey is way better than 2 pars. And I think we know that Hovland can go low and just score well when things are going for him, rack up a lot of birdies. But 94th percentile ball striking over the past year, 96th percentile in opportunities gained over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National. That's their basically birdie chance number. So like he's rating out really well there, getting the ball into birdie position. So, and that past 50 rounds is like starting to look really good too. It's like all good fields, good events, tough golfer. So over 72 holes, I think that's gonna pay off for us.
Yeah, I think the Hovland's very interesting. Again, I was on him last week and do not regret it, despite the way that it broke later on. I think that he makes a lot of sense at 10-3 and could be good for like a Rahm plus balanced lineup. The other guy who grades out well there is Patrick Cantley at 10-7. I was filling out my notes yesterday and was on Twitter because I'm chronically online and saw your win simulations pop up. And I was like, hey, that's Patrick Cantley. Brandon Cantley off Cantley this week. Neither can I. He's a 10-7. The stats, obviously, very good for Cantley. He ranks in the top 10 in the field in off the tee play, around the green, and in bentgrass putting. The lone lower area is approach, where he ranks 21st. Cantley did lose 0.7 on approach at the Northern Trust, so not like it's a non-issue, but he can make up for it elsewhere when things are not fully on there, which gives him a really high floor. What gives Cantley a high ceiling is what happens when he does nail the approach. He did that at the Memorial. He won the event there, gained 17.2 total strokes in the field, which is stupid. Cantley gives us all that for $10,700. It helps us stay balanced after we get into Rahm. So I am very on board with Cantley in a field of this caliber. What are your thoughts on Patrick Cantley this week?
Love him. My favorite golfer outside of Rahm this week, I would say.
Cool.
My pick to win a lot of places and with my actual interests, let's say. I just love a really well-balanced golfer in a no-cut event because you need to kind of you can have like one bad round, but it can't be a bad round. It just has to be like an average round relative to whatever the scores are. But for someone who does everything well, you really can't. It's got to take a particularly bad set of circumstances for you to shoot yourself out of an event. And Cantley just seems really locked in. And at that salary, I think he makes a ton of sense. I would prefer him to Rory easily. I would like Louis plenty, but don't know what his health is. So for me, in that 10,000 range, it's going to be Cantley very, very often.
Same for me. Let's move now to the mid range. Who stands out to you there?
Hideki Matsuyama, 9,800 is his salary. Really rare to see, but that speaks to the depth of this field. It's just a really, really good number for Hideki, who is 15th in the field and Data Golf's true strokes gained over the past 3 months. 4th tee to green in that span. And surprisingly lost strokes from approach at the Northern Trust, but gained on the greens, which is like the anti-Hideki. But again, I see the a little bit of irony in saying we're almost guaranteed to get positive strokes gained from the ball striking and the tee to green numbers from Hideki, and he didn't put that up last week. But that probably just makes it all the more likely that he will bounce back because we know the long term is so good from him. Tee to green, so for 9,800, I'm not going to full on balanced build, but if you just play Jon Rahm, find one, possibly 2 values, like you can get back up to this range, and that's kind of my main plan for the week.
I like it too, and I think my preferred guy here is Abraham Answer at 10,000. Feels
bet me.
Answer versus Hideki.
Yeah.
Okay, sure.
I mean, again, for context, for anyone who's new, Jim's up 26-12 in our head-to-head FanDuel point bets. So,
can I transfer those over the bobble hat?
No.
Okay. All right, I tried. Either way, I think Answer's being a bit undervalued due to the distance discussion. I want to buy low. Despite not being super long, Answer is still 14th in the field in strokes gained off the tee. He's 15th in approach, 16th in bentgrass putting. Answer's finished 8th or better in 5 of 9 events since the start of May. In that stretch, he has gained off the tee in all but one event, which was the US Open. He gained 3.7 at the PGA, 1.4 at the WGC St. Jude's. He's not gaining exclusively in bad fields. So I think 10,000 is a great salary for someone as steady as Answer. And I just think that he's pretty enticing. What are your thoughts on Abraham Answer, who you hate, apparently, relative to Hideki Matsuyama?
Well, it's funny because he's actually rates out better in my combo model than Hideki. So what do I know? But yeah, I mean, again, it's Abraham Answer, good on bentgrass. We know he's not going to gain distance, but he can still gain strokes off the tee because he's so accurate. We know he's a good putter. I don't see enough to dislike him. Sure. And if we're gonna make that case, I think it's important that we ask, why not Webb Simpson?
I mean, Webb's form is not as solid as Answer's, I don't think. I mean, it's pretty comparable, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, long term, it's virtually the same with those adjustments. I mean, would you consider trying to build an archetype lineup this week? Okay.
Because I don't think the archetype I would be going towards would be the distance guys. And I think all the distance guys are a bit overvalued. So no.
I think that it might. I mean,
I think if I go full on Webbish type guys and Answer type guys, I'm going to be losing too much. I can't sacrifice that much distance. So the only archetype build I could go for would be, I guess I could go for just all out ball strikers. Maybe I could do it that way, or just approach gods. Maybe I could do that, but I can't. The one archetype I gravitate towards is distance, and I think a lot of those guys are getting juiced up this week.
So the best, if you wanted to do the inverse, which Jim's not proposing, but I think that at least it could.
Speed,
I mean,
Webb, Answer.
Go on. I mean, you got it from here.
Okay, so if you were to do it, Spieth, Webb, Answer. Cameron Tringali, who,
of course,
again, would you put?
Don't ask me. You got this.
No?
Don't ask me. You got this.
Oh, I don't care. Anyway, you take it away.
I was just gonna say that just because I have it, the best strokes gained these are the best golfers based on that over the past year with all my adjustments. Louis, Xander, Cam Smith, Spieth, JT, aka for those of us not in the know, Justin Thomas, DJ, who is Dustin Johnson, Webb, Berger, Rahm, Morikawa, Cantley, Tringali.
Wow. Tringali going to win again. Guaranteed. Who else do you like here in this mid-range?
Who do I Sam Burns. So talk about distance, huh? 9,300. Quiet. Like I think I would say quietly in good form. I haven't heard a whole lot of buzz, especially with like the Finau win and with all the studs and like John Rahm at the top. Like nobody's really focused on Sam Burns, but 21st at the Northern Trust, his fourth top 25 in 5 starts. He is in the 76th percentile in this field in adjusted strokes gained approach over the past year, 85th percentile in adjusted putting in that sample as well. Over the past 50 rounds, according to Fantasy National, 97th percentile in birdie or better rate gained. Long enough to get that edge if we're playing that angle, which I think is our default. I was just saying maybe there's an angle that we just do the inverse and hope that maybe the course doesn't demand distance. But if you want distance and a value golfer, I think Sam Burns very much should be on your radar.
Yeah, the short game's been getting a lot better recently, which is pretty fun. He's been a good putter, but like the chipping's been good too. So I think that Burns is interesting. I also like Joaquin Neiman around here, $9,400. Looking at Neiman, if you compare him to old Neiman, like, by that I mean Neiman like when he was 20 as opposed to like 21 or whatever. His irons have been kind of cold or colder than usual recently, but he's still performing decently well. So I think that that's interesting for him in terms of potentially buying low. He's gained an average of 0.9 strokes in approach over his past 5 events. His lifetime average is actually double that at 1.8. The other numbers for Neiman, though, are looking much better. He's actually gained a stroke around the greens in 3 of the past 4 measured events. He's 32nd in bent grass putting in this field. If Neiman can keep those gains and have like an old school Neiman iron performance, he can finish top 5. So I think he's a great option here at $9,400. What about you? Thoughts on Joaquin Neiman this week?
Yeah, I like Neiman. Definitely long enough, even though he doesn't seem like a big hitter. He's got plenty of distance, and he's on bent grass, which is always something that we should keep in mind with Neiman. The putting is not always consistent with him, but on bent grass, he tends to putt his best. So I'm with you. He's one of my favorite plays, and had you not talked about him, I would have.
Okay, let's move down to the lower salaried range. Who are you targeting here at $9,000 and lower?
I'm going to go with Jason Kochrack coming off that missed cut, playing that angle for this week a little bit. Positive putting splits on bent grass for him. 82nd percentile in birdie or better rate gained over the past 50 rounds as well. And I mean, once you get that out of the way, like the putting's probably going to be, putting's been trending up for him. On bent grass, he's fine. Probably going to make a good number of birdies. But we know the real reason that we should like Jason Kochrack is just the ball striking, especially whenever he is listed at a value salary. We know kind of have that joke where Kochrack's like always 9,300. It does kind of go up and down, but this week at 9,000, he's in the value tier. He is 5th among all golfers with a salary at 9,000 or below in ball striking strokes gained over the past year with my adjustments. So I think that's pretty strong. We know the putting can be good, and honestly, we know I don't like to just cite wins, but like we've seen wins recently from him, so there is that upside if he putts well and brings the ball striking that he has.
Kochrack was very close to being one of my picks. I agree. My first low salary guy, shocker, Cameron Tringali. Who could have guessed this? Just going to copy and paste everything from last week. He did lose 3.9 strokes off the tee at the Northern Trust, which is always possible with Cam Tringali, but he still finished 21st because he gained everywhere else. He ranks 26th in approach, 7th around the green, 13th at bent grass putting. He ranks 22nd in Data Golf's true strokes gained the past 6 months, but ranks 30th in salary for FanDuel this week. Even with the bad driving, I still feel very confident in Cameron Tringali for this week. What are your thoughts on Tringali at $8,800?
I was muted. I drank my coffee and then I thought I unmuted, but
I accidentally unmuted myself before clearing my throat earlier, and I felt very bad about that. So I apologize if you heard me clearing my throat. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's the Wednesday recording. I'm not like up to, so I love Tringali. He's the best long-term golfer below 9,000 pretty easily. We talk about him plenty. You talked him up. You've alluded to him all show as if we had any reason
No,
to
that was last
doubt.
week is where I talked about him. I didn't bring him up until like at least the 45-minute mark this week, which is a lot of restraint.
Yeah, but I think Tringali is just one of the best value plays of the week, so I'm with you.
All right, who else do you like down here in the value range?
Charlie Hoffman, we have seen his odds shortened to 70-1 from 100-1. Is a bit of a weaker putter on bent grass, but he's gained 0.01 strokes per round on the surface over his past 100. So
there we go. Money.
It's positive. For 8,500, that's a totally fine baseline putting performance. I'm good with that. And he's actually third among value golfers in ball striking strokes gained. 87th percentile in birdie or better he gained over the past 50 rounds. And he's 97th percentile in that sample, that 50-round sample, in opportunities gained. So I don't think it's very fluky that he's converting birdies. And over those 4 guaranteed rounds, I think opportunities and birdies are just that's what's gonna separate these golfers who aren't finishing necessarily top 10, but who's putting up the most FanDuel points. So that's a big key for this week.
I like Hoffman as well. I think he's a good one. If you need a little bit extra wiggle room, in terms of value play, I could definitely see myself going with Hoffman. I also kind of like Keegan Bradley. Maybe we could just maybe if I speed read this part in talking about Bradley, but he's like Tringali where we know his shortcomings. Just kind of hope he does enough elsewhere to overcome that. And it is still the putting holding Keegan back. He had a string in June and July where he lost at least 3 strokes putting in 3 straight measured events. And it really erased some of the good vibes we had around Keegan the previous months, but he actually gained 2.9th Northern Trust. Not expecting that. I would never expect that. That'd be stupid. But it does mean we don't have to automatically put him down for 2.5 strokes lost putting, which would seem bad. So at least there's that, He can gain accidentally at times. Keegan ranks 23rd off the tee, 11th in approach, 16th around the green. If he has a putting implosion the first 2 days, at least he's not going to miss the cut like he usually would. So he has the weekend to make up for it. He's $8,700. I know his issues. I can live with him at that salary. Where do you sit on Keegan Bradley this week?
So I mean, he is almost career-wise almost neutral on bent grass. Over the past 100, he's not quite so much. I actually, because I still had it pulled up with the percentage of rounds gained putting on bent grass. I expected Bradley to be at the bottom, but he's at 49%.
So he's above both the guys we bet. That's cool.
And Garcia, the bottom 3 is Garcia, Cam Champ, and Corey Connors, all below 40. So
this is upsetting.
So Keegan, honestly, while Daniel Berger's down there at 47%, that's wild. But yeah, so not as bad as I expected. And
so you're saying Keegan's gonna win?
No, but I definitely don't mind Keegan Bradley. But I think there are at least a few other names down here. If you really want to kind of punt, I think it's somewhat viable. And I would say Brian Harmon at 83, Emiliano Grillo, sorry. Is it Grillo?
Yep.
7,600, Max Homa, 7,600, Taylor Gooch, 7,400.
Yeah, I think those are actually all fine. Can't find anything to object to. I tried. I want to disagree with you as often as possible. Couldn't do it. So disappointing there. Let's finish up with our win picks for this week at the BMW Championship. I don't have anyone picked out yet, so you go ahead. I have Cantley. Sorry, I want Cantley.
I knew you were going to do that. So I was going to go with Cantley.
You can go with Cantley too if you want.
Yeah, but I'll go Hovland.
Okay.
And I'll go DJ because I was talking.
Are you going Hovland to spite me? This is just a slap in the face. Outrageous.
Why would that be to spite you?
Because of the putter thing last week. We talked about it, how we're not on speaking terms, and you're just going
to no.
You're trying to curry favor, and I'm out here just sobbing.
I picked Hovland because it's not fun to me if we pick the same golfer.
Fine. I won't.
But I'm betting Patrick Cantley, and I'm recommending him everywhere, so everyone knows. But I'll take Victor Hovland for this week. And
boy, I want to go longer, but I feel like I can't justify going longer than like 35 or so.
You do need to make up some ground.
I know, but like I don't care about winning. I don't want to give out bad recommendations. I'm not going to give out bad recommendations for the purpose of winning.
Well, then we shouldn't do this pod. You're going to go Bryson, aren't you?
No.
Surprising.
I'm going to go Berger at 33. We've not talked about it in the entire podcast, but I think
I don't think we said his name.
A little bit undervalued, so I'm going to go Daniel Berger. I'm saying.
I mean, I love Daniel Berger, but I don't think we said his name at all.
I don't even care. I'm not going to give out stupid recommendations.
But like Bryson at 20 is not stupid.
Fine, Bryson
you
and Cantley. If he wins, it's your fault. Bryson and Cantley are my two picks. Who'd you pick again? Hovland and some other stupid person?
DJ.
All right.
I just
Hovland, DJ, again, Dustin Johnson for the uninitiated.
I mean, okay, so here's the thing. Like, I know we're wrapping up, but if you look at the past FedEx Cup playoff winners, it's like all superstars. So it is kind of dumb to chase long
shots. I'm not gonna give out bad recommendations. I don't care if I win. I'm not gonna give out bad recommendations.
You don't want Pat and Kazire at plus 210? I was gonna go
Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk at 210.
Robert Streb.
Nope. Chris Kirk at 210. Guarantee. You said he played here in 2007. That's all that matters. So, really, though, it is Bryson and Cantley. You have DJ and Hovland. That is all that we have here for this week. Back to the regular time next week because obviously things were different this week with the Northern Trust. So back to Tuesday next week. We have a lot of stuff here on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. We have MLB. We have NFL coming up just around the corner. UFC, NASCAR, potentially more sports to come. Who can say? Who can say? But a lot of incentive to subscribe to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts. Brandon, people have questions for you on Twitter. Where can they find you there?
Macadol13, GDULA13.
And Brandon's weekly Q&A coming up today at 3:30 on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter pages. I am at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcasts. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in. Good luck to you at the BMW Championship. We'll talk to you once again next week to wrap up the FedEx Cup playoffs. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast powered by numberFire.